Hello everyone, this is Moshe, the Electric Israeli and FSD. If you're new, please subscribe and help me change the world. One electric car at a time. Thank you to my supporters. If you are in the market to buy a Tesla car, please use my referral code. You can get $1,000 off your price. And also support me on Patreon. As you know, China, not slowly but surely, fast and very confident, is taking over the world in electric cars. Okay, and we don't have them here yet. They may come in the back door. We don't have them here. We imposed 100% tariffs on them. But also China has control of 80% of the materials that make batteries. 80% of the batteries and their materials are controlled by China. To me, guys, I have to tell you, it's almost a national security issue. So they're taking over, and the EU, the European Union, is trying to deal with them using tariffs, and the United States just dumping tariffs after tariffs, and I'm going to talk to you about it in a minute. And I'm going to also give you my ideas of what can we do about this Chinese takeover. So first of all, in 2020, there was 1.6 billion worth of Chinese cars sold in the EU. In 2023, is 11.5 billion. Okay, so it's like 1,000% more. In 2019, the Chinese market share in Europe was 1%. In 2024, is 15%. Now, here is the double-edged sword. The European Union imposed on itself, like a self-inflicting wounds, crazy standards of pollution reduction and EV adoption, which is great. But it cannot be achieved without solar panels and electric cars. And electric cars, they have to be affordable. And solar panels, they have to be affordable. And who makes affordable solar panels and electric cars? China. So how are you going to achieve that goal if you don't or you don't make yourself inexpensive EV? So what happened? The Chinese have what we call state capitalism, that the money is controlled by the state. And when that happens, tremendous amount of production happens. So you produce too much. So whether you go bankrupt or you have to export. So in order for the Chinese, which there are 100 electric car Chinese manufacturers, 90% of them, you never heard of them, okay? And so because they produce so much, they end up in two places: in Europe, Southeast Asia, not in the United States yet, or South America, or in a graveyard of electric cars, which that happens because it's all subsidized by the Chinese government. So it's very worrisome to the European Union, and also, of course, to the United States. We'll get to it in a minute. So what the EU is been doing? They've been discussing an increase from 10% of tariffs, of taxes, to add to it 36.6%, so 46.6% of tariffs because of the Chinese government support of the Chinese EVs, which makes no money, and some of them even lose money. So now what can the Chinese do? The Chinese can also retaliate by having tariffs on their own, but that is possible. So the EU is trying to block the Chinese from coming in by imposing tariffs of them, just like the United States, which Trump and Biden doubled down 100% on Chinese cars. So what are you going to do to make this fair? So because the Chinese government is giving all this money, and for example, in China, to make an electric car, average electric car is $5,500. In the EU, it's $20,000, 4 times more, $20,000. Why? Government subsidies, cheap labor, and control of the raw materials. It's all in China. So that's like a perfect storm. So like I said in the beginning, 80% of the batteries around the world are controlled by China, also through subsidies. And also, so for example, SAIC has 37.6% of the market share, Geely 19.9%. Of the market, and BYD 17.4% of the battery market, and their CATL, that is one of the biggest battery manufacturers. So now I'm sure you heard of it, there's a world organization, the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and they're claiming that China is breaking all the rules of fair trade. Okay, and by the way, the Chinese appealed one of their rulings. So, for example, in Europe, there's not higher taxes on Tesla cars that come from China because it is an American company, and it is. But more than half of Tesla cars around the world that are produced are from China, close to 1 million. Last year, Tesla delivered 1.8 million. 1 million of them are just from China. So, like I said, it's a double-edged sword. So, what can you say about tariffs? Tariffs are basically end up on the consumer. Okay, when Trump says we took billions of dollars from China, that's not true. Because if you raise the tariffs, the manufacturer is going to pass this cost on the consumer. So it's not exactly true. It can achieve the goal of blocking them from coming to your shores, but it's not going to help the cause of the self-imposed standards that you did. So let's say California won't by 2030 to abandon all gas cars. Okay, fine. So what am I buying instead? Very expensive $60,000-$80,000 trucks. Most people cannot afford it. So by 2030, for example, China is going to control 55% of the electric cars. That is from, it used to be nothing in the 90s, okay? So the EU is scrambling, as I say, and the United States is scrambling. So again, more numbers, 84% of solar panels made in China. So if you want to have sustainable energy, well, once you buy solar panels from China, it will help your cause, but it's going to bankrupt your own industry. So here's another example. BYD Seagull. It's a $10,000 car. So let's say BYD is going to open an agency in the United States and there's 100% tariff. So it's still $20,000. Okay, $20,000. Now the dealer has to make some money, so it's $25,000. It's still one of the cheapest cars. So what are you going to do? What tariffs are going to do? All right. So if that happens, there's going to be lower supply, lower variety of cars. So in the United States, what do we have? We have 2 electric cars. Tesla, 50% of the market, and Hyundai, 10%. The rest, nothing, okay? It can make the cars more expensive, like I said at the beginning. You can produce them in Mexico, but Trump already said if he's going to be the president, it's not going to it's going to impose 100% tax on cars that come from Mexico as well. So now what do? Or you can actually have them produced in the countries that you want to produce. But we'll get to it in a minute because that's the most important part. Okay, so China cannot exist without the EU and the United States market. They make too many of them. They're not enough to consume. China, they consume about 25 million cars a year, and they make twice as many. So now what are they going to do with them? You know what I mean? There are a lot of complaints about China for stealing intellectual property. That we know going back many years. And it's basically an external enemy that you have because of the Chinese and the regulations. So one of the best thing in my view to do is to let the Chinese come to the United States. For example, there's a car called Polestar. It's owned by Volvo, which is owned by Geely, which is Chinese. They make them in the United States. A Nissan Leaf, make them in the United States. Hyundai, they're planning to make them in the United States. So once you let Chinese manufacturers come and open plants in the EU, I know they're opening in Mexico, BYD, or in the United States. But that almost defeats the point, because what's the advantage of the Chinese is the raw material, it's on their territory. Their labor is cheap. So if they're going to do this in Europe or the United States, yes, they're going to bring jobs to the United States and Europe, but it's not going to be the advantages of government subsidies and of raw material. So it's like almost an impossible thing. Now, I believe in competition. Competition is good. So I think eventually we will have to have the Chinese make cars here. They may be a little bit more expensive than what they would be if they come from China, but there will be variety. Like I said, in essence, we have 2 options. In Israel, the Chinese car market, the Chinese cars took over the industry. Gas cars as well. BYD is the most sold car in Israel. Okay, the most sold. But Israel has no car industry, so it's fine. Bring it on, bring it on. Every new Chinese car comes to Israel. So it's very interesting of how is this going to play out. Let me know your thoughts. See you next video.